Very good afternoon. Welcome to the Human Resource Consulting Specializations talk. I'm Associate Professor Nigel Phang from the Divisions of Leadership, Management and Organization. And with me, also our senior who graduated a few years ago, Val Liang. Val, you want to say hello to the audience?
Yeah. Hi everybody, my name is Val. I am currently with Shopee Singapore as a Regional Learning and Development Senior Associate. I graduated back in 2018, so it's been about 4 years, and I'm very glad to be back in NTU.
Yeah, so we are very happy to have Val with us. I think for many of you out there, you probably also want to hear from a perspective of someone who have actually gone through the program and also her current experience working in the HR role. Right. So allow me to perhaps just start the stage by explaining what's exactly the role of a human resource. Now, some also call it human capital. And I will just do a quick 5 minutes overview of a human resource function, and also later on to explain a bit more about how our curriculum, our module, actually align to what the industry is looking for as well. Right? So let me perhaps start with these slides to show you a typical human resource organization. Now, of course, different organizations will have a different type of setting, but generally speaking, for a much larger organization, they will actually set up a human resource function into various specialized roles. And this role will be something that you also learn in our HRC program. Now, of course, from the organization structure, you will see this position called Chief Human Resource Officer. So for a large organization, typically they will have someone very senior. In short, we generally call them a CHRO to look after the entire HR function. You must also appreciate that for a large organization, HR is not the only critical department function, but there are others as well, right? Such as marketing, operations, and so on. But today, we are focusing on the human resource function. Okay, so coming back to this organization structure, you will see what we call, this structure is what we call a matrix organization. And an organization with a matrix setup means that there are people who actually take on a very specialized role in the HR department. So on the left column, for example, you will see specialized functions such as compensation and benefits, and then learning and development, recruitment and selection, industrial relations, and human resource information system, or sometimes they also have a shared service, right? Now, you will see on the horizontal, there are also what we call the HR business partner. These are more senior HR people that support a particular business organization or division, right? Because for much larger organization, they may have different what we call business unit, right? So, and each business unit sometimes can range from a few thousand to even 10 over thousand, right? So you really need someone dedicated to support the business unit. So this is just an overview of how the HR organization organized around the work. And why it is matrix? Because, for example, when the HR business partner needs some benchmark information about a certain pay or bonus or benefits to kind of attract and retain talents for the particular business unit, he or she will probably have to talk to the colleagues from the compensation and benefit department that actually have all this information to advise the HR business partner. Likewise, there are other situations, for example, if it's a unionized organization, then he or she may even have to talk to the industrial relations specialist to seek advice about certain, could be a dispute, or sometimes it could be just negotiating a new agreement with the unions and so on, right? So that's why the business partner do require that kind of specialist support, all right? And the specialists who are in that vertical column, they are the one that actually have very in-depth knowledge about the particular field in the HR function. All right, so then how would our HRC module kind of a structure around this kind of organization structure? Okay, I'm not going to talk about like if you come into the year one, those generic or not generic, but other modules that you have to learn and so on. I'm going to talk about from year 2 onwards. If you decide to take up the human resource consulting specialization program, these are the modules that we cover or give to our students, right? And you appreciate that all these are very specialized in its own way. It starts from, for example, the strategic human resource management and consulting, right? And this is a very good starting module to give students an overview of what does it mean to be strategic HR. Now, sometimes people view HR as operation, right? That means you take care of the employee's record, payroll, and so on. But there's also a very strategic role that HR plays. Let's say, for example, planning, talent management, and so on. There's also another module called Total Rewards Management. This is about the compensation and benefits that I mentioned earlier on, right? Talent sourcing and acquisition. This module covers areas such as how do you hire, select people, and how do you actually, what tools or method do you use to arrive at a more accurate assessment of the potential employees' fit with the organization. The other modules, managing and consulting through research. This is a module where our professor will actually cover topics around how do you go out and establish a research approach. Now, you'll be surprised in many of the HR issues that you have to handle in future, you work in an organization. You also need to sometimes put on the research mindset that what is the research question I'm trying to address here, right? Because by not having a clarity in terms of the question, you may be wasting time and resources in, getting people to gather information that are not actually answer the critical questions that you're looking for. And then managing and consulting, obviously there's also skills required to be effective, whether it's an in-house consultant or external consultant. And I will say a bit more about the consulting role that HR can actually pursue as well later on. Currently, we also offer this module called the HR Technology Matrix and Performance. These particular modules, we will actually cover several typical what organization use in terms of the HRIS system, Human Resource Information System. Typically, what are some of the key performance indicators or measurements that the HR departments need to be aware, and then also how do you actually set performance management programs for the organization. But I would say that we are also making changes you see below, for example, that we are actually going to transition into this topic called people analytics, right? Simply because I think the industry also making a lot of transformation changes. The expectations of a human resource function is moving more into people analytics, which means that how HR department is able to examine all the data that the organization actually have gathered over the years, not just data about employees, but also data from other sources such as the CRM, customer relationship management, or even supply chain management information. When you triangulate all this information, you are able to better arrive at a more accurate or even predictive analysis of the people issues, right? So I think that is a future trend of moving into a people analytics space. The other areas or the other modules that we also cover will be talent development and management. So in this module, obviously we actually equip our students with the knowledge of learning and development that Val is currently doing in Shopee. And also how do you, one very critical strategic function that HR needs to perform is actually talent management. In other words, how do you select the high potential in the organization and invest in the development of these high potential so that they can be the future leaders of the organization. Now, the other modules have also become very important, right? Which is about the employment law. And for HR students, you need to actually equip yourself with the knowledge of the labor legislations, right? Employment law is a very generic term. It actually covers, in the Singapore context, many others labor legislation, right? So including like if your organization needs to hire foreign talents, then there are also specific law regarding that, and also like CPF and so on. So there are many of these regulations that HR students need to equip yourself with. And the last modules here you see on the screen is what we call the cultural intelligence, how to be explorer of the world. Now, being a HR specialist, one of the critical skill set is communication, right? And you most likely, as Singapore is a very open economy, right? You're not going to work just with fellow Singaporeans. You're going to work with people from different ethnicity, culture, nationalities, and so on. So the cultural intelligence is a module that equips our students to be comfortable, to have the motivation to learn about different cultural practices, so that you are better in communications with people from diverse backgrounds, right? So this is an overview of the HRC, what we call the major prescribed elective. Now, let me move on to share the final slides, and this has to do with one question that many people usually ask, that all these modules, is it what the industry is looking for, right? If I take on this, if I sign up to learn this HRC specialization program, is it recognized by the industry, right? So in this regard, let me assure you, we have actually worked very closely with the Institute for Human Resource Profession, IHRP. Now, IHRP is a professional body set up by the tripartite committee, in other words, MOM, the union, and the employer, to set up a few years ago. And their sole mission is to enhance the HR professionalism in Singapore. And one of the core missions is to provide certification so that people who get certified under the IHRP framework is being recognized by the industry that this person is well qualified to do a HR job, right? So if you look at this diagram here, the IHRP body of competency is structured in such a way that they have the foundational competency. That means regardless what position you are at, whether you are a junior HR person to a very senior person, you should have this foundational competency around analytics, around technology, right? Aware of, equip yourself with good interpersonal relationship skills, communication skills, as well as labor policy, right? These are the foundational competency of a HR profession. Now, the one in the middle ring, that's where you is applicable to a HR role, what we call the functional competency, right? It starts from the HR planning. That's why the module on strategic HR management and consulting, that actually equip you with understanding of HR, strategic HR, start with the planning. And then how do you actually attract people, right? That's why we have a module on talent sourcing and acquisitions. And then you see also develop, engage. Now, you'll probably notice separate, right? Separate is not, there isn't a so-called specific module on so-called separation. Now, separation in practice, in organization, involve both voluntary and involuntary separation. Voluntary means that the employees either retire or resign, right? Involuntary means that sometimes organizations have to go through restructuring or merger acquisition, and they may have to do retrenchment, like what you observed in the last few years due to the COVID situation. And in this regard, the employment law actually equip our students to understand, if your organization actually needs to go through that kind of involuntary separation, what are the legislations, what are the guidelines that a well-trained HR professional needs to be aware of. Now, even for retirements or vaccination, right? Then the total rewards management module will also cover those aspects as well, right? Then, of course, there are other modules that you will see support the mindset and behaviors, and that has to do with, for example, a module that you don't see in the HRC specialization, but modules such as managing organization change. This module is actually a elective that opens to all the students specialized in any other areas, right? Because we believe that managing organization change, not just a HR skill set, but also needed whether you're accountant or marketing person or business analytic person, right? We all have to learn to deal with change in organization, right? So that kind of gives you an overview of our module, as well as how our modules also align to the industry kind of needs, so that when you graduate from this program, you are well equipped to start your career in HR and work in an organization. All right, so now with this, I would like to perhaps move on and actually look at some of the things that perhaps Val will be in a much better position to share her experience, right? Because like what she shared earlier on, she graduated 4 years ago, and her first job is in Shopee. Yes. But actually before that, she also have done a few internships. So perhaps, Val, you would like to share with the audience, like, what was it like for you, right? You know, studying in a HRC program. Yeah. What were some of the memorable moments for you?
Okay, I think I really enjoyed a lot of the courses I took. I met amazing people in the cohort. I think the batch of HR students is great. Even now, I still keep in touch with quite a lot of my juniors and peers that I studied with back in HRC. In fact, because my first role in Shopee was actually more of campus recruitment, I did hire quite a number of my HR juniors as interns or fresh grads, and they're doing very well right now in Shopee. Yeah.
That's great. So perhaps you could share with the audience, like, you know, there are so many of those HRC modules.
Yes.
Which modules that you enjoy most?
Okay. I really enjoyed the total rewards management. I think the prof was great, Prof. Ellen. Very entertaining class. I also worked with a lot of close friends in the group project for that class. And the fast care project was pretty challenging, but it's really something that is, as in, I think the way it was being taught was very interesting, because we had software, we had case studies, and a series of different phases that we had to accomplish. So it was a very well-structured curriculum, and I think it was just a very insightful module. Yeah, so that was one. Another one that I also enjoyed was cultural intelligence. That was something I took on in my final semester. So there were a lot of exchange students in the class, a lot of diversity.
That's great.
I got to work with people from you know, different countries, and then the project itself was also quite fun. We had to do some video assignment on showing how, like, you know, different cultural nuances may come into conflict. Okay,
great. Now let me perhaps go back further, right? Because I understand you are actually a double major students, right? So you actually took accountancy, accounting, as well as you know, select HR as your second major. So why that decisions to take on double major, and also eventually why pursue a career in HR and not accounting?
That's a very good question. To be honest, when I joined MBS and decided to take on a double major, my intention was to take on accountancy as well as banking and finance, because I do see the synergies. They kind of make sense to go together. But that was before I took on the core modules in year one. Among a lot of the core modules that we took, I think the one I enjoyed the most was organization behavior.
OB.
Yeah, OB. That was like our specialization core module in order to determine whether we would be a good fit for HR.
That's right.
So I really enjoyed that course. I think my prof was Professor Ko Cheng Boon.
Okay.
Really enjoyed his class. The assignments were actually really fun. There was like
Mhm.
a creative thinking and critical thinking assignment.
Yes.
And when it came to deciding on my specialization, I was thinking, really this module is something that I really enjoyed, and I also did pretty well in it.
Okay.
So I decided that, if your strength and your passion kind of intersect, I think it's a clear choice.
Mhm.
And I decided to specialize and have no regrets ever since.
Okay. Yeah. So perhaps you can also share, like any student study in the universities, there are ups and downs, right? So when you took on this double major, what was the ups and downs for you?
Ups and downs. Honestly, I think there were more ups than downs in my university life. I was actually pretty active in hall.
Okay.
So got a great group of friends from hall. I was also in the university scholars program.
Mhm.
So a lot of my very closest friends now actually came from that program.
Mhm.
I really felt like having a family within the school. I also went for exchange. That was definitely something that was very, very memorable.
Overseas exchange?
Yes. Exchange, I went to Queen's University in Canada.
Okay.
So that was during my year 3. Yeah, for 6 months. I think that was something that was very, once in a lifetime kind of experience to live and study overseas, staying with Singaporean students, of course, but also having group projects, mingling with a lot of the international students there. Yeah, so that was really fun. And of course, I really enjoyed my studies within HRC. I think the courses, most of them were really fun, and I think I did pretty well in the courses too. I think HR just came more naturally to me. So it's good that I decided to specialize and also pursue it in my career. Some of the downs, I would think, probably because in my first year I was pretty active in hall. I took on a lot of different commitments. I was in hall council. So juggling studies as well as like CCA commitments is tricky.
Yes.
But I also decided back then that I wanted to make the most out of my university life. I really didn't want to leave with any regrets.
Yes.
So I think it's all about balance. And then later on, I started to change up my priorities, taking on internships, joining the Human Resource Consulting Club in my final year.
All right.
And just trying to maximize my university experience. So I think the downs are more of having to juggle the different commitments that I had, but there were definitely upsides to that as well. Okay,
so time management is important.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe you can share a bit more about, you mentioned earlier about exchange program experience in Queen's in Australia, right?
Canada.
Oh, Canada, sorry.
Yeah.
You recall what modules did you take there, and what was the experience like? Compare and contrast with the Singapore learning environment.
Okay, I'm going to try to recall. I think I took more of like the business module. Something similar to POM, I think. There's a management.
Principle of management.
Yeah, principles of management. There was also an accounting module that I cleared. I think I managed to clear about 4 core modules and then 1 elective. I can't really remember specifically what they were. But I think the most memorable part is really working with not just the Canadians, the locals there, but also there were quite a lot of exchange students as well. I worked with people from Italy, from France. Language was an interesting issue to deal with, but I think it proved very helpful because later on in my career in Shopee, I also worked with different officers, different countries, and I think that kind of helped to put you in that kind of global mindset because, like you mentioned earlier, Singapore is pretty small. A lot of times you'll end up working with not just Singaporeans but people from different countries.
Diverse background,
Yeah, so it's very, I think, like I mentioned, CQ is also something that's very helpful. The diversity, being able to be very culturally aware and sensitive,
That's great.
Working.
Yeah, so, and you mentioned earlier on also that you also joined the club.
Yes.
Can you say a bit more about your experience in the HRC club?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. I was one of the very few final year who was in the club. A lot of the students who joined were from year 2. So I met a lot of my juniors there that I'm still in touch with till today. The reason why I decided to join was because I think a lot of my CCA commitments weren't in like the business clubs.
Yeah.
It was more of like hall dance, jam band, like more cultural activities.
Yes.
So I wanted to also be able to meet more people from the HR community before going out to the working world.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was also a very good opportunity for me to improve a lot of soft skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, because I was also leading certain projects. For example, the alumni networking event, that was a project under my team. So I got the chance to lead a project team to plan and execute the event. So I think that was really a very good experience.
Could you share with the audience like what is this alumni event all about? Yeah.
So basically we have, I think it was an annual event. We invite our HR alumni back to do sharing such as this, share with current students within HR on how's their experience like in university, in their careers, in their internships. We did some focus group discussions where they talk about specific topics pertaining to their current role. We also invited, I think, we engaged with some Willis Howard Watson back then to also do a special talk with the students. So it was very engaging. I think the turnout was pretty good as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other events that you still remember about, in HRC?
Yes. Early on, we did a no profs allowed event
where
it's just the HR seniors and the HR juniors just mingling and understanding more about what to expect, tips, how to do well in the different modules, and more about internships as well. I think just networking and learning more, sharing between seniors and juniors.
And you can share about how all these HRC course, the training, including your accounting programs training, equip you in your current job in Shopee, right?
Okay.
And perhaps to start with, what's the role in Shopee, right? So that people understand your role, and then how all this training actually help you in your job.
Okay. So my first role was more of campus engagement. It was quite funny because I was coming back to NTU like every week for career fairs back then. It felt like I haven't graduated. I just kept coming back to campus, seeing a lot of my juniors in school. That was for about 6 months before I told my manager that I was very keen to explore recruitment. So me and another colleague, we kind of basically co-set up the campus recruitment team in Shopee. Started from the 2 of us, now it's about 10 people, to hire interns as well as work closely with the campus, the different schools, so for career officers and partnerships. And then, hiring interns and converting them as well. So that was for my first 1.5 years. Later on, I transferred to the regional learning and development team. So it was more of a learning business partnership role. I work very closely with the different business units. It's kind of like a HR business partner, but for L&D. And so we conducted learning needs analysis, understood more about what the team needs in terms of performance gap, future skills, and then co-create learning solutions for the teams. So that was for another about 1.5 years before leading a new team, a new portfolio within L&D, focusing more on global onboarding. So I'm not sure if most of you know, but I think Shopee expanded into new markets quite a bit last year. So there was really this priority to focus on new hire onboarding, to make sure that our new hires have a good experience and they also are able to get up to speed with things, how the organization works, the culture. So there's more emphasis placed on onboarding, and that's why I took on this new role back in just last year, July, to lead a team to work very closely with all our new markets and the different offices.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I think one of the common perceptions people choose HR is that, or rather comments I hear from students quite a few times that, I choose HR because I like to interact with people. I want to strengthen my people skills and so on. And I'm less comfortable with numbers, right?
Okay.
Would you like to share a bit more about nowadays the HR role when it comes to digital literacy, all right, what does it take? What's the expectation from organization for HR people?
Well, there's definitely a lot more reliance, a lot more frequent usage of different HR systems and tools. For example, managing employee data with our HR information systems, recruitment using applicant tracking systems, L&D with learning management systems. So a lot more familiarity and the ability to adapt to different tools and systems, because every organization also uses different kinds of platforms.
Yep.
I think increasingly, given the pandemic, hybrid and remote working arrangements also see the need for familiarity with video conferencing tools. For example, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, to do our day-to-day meetings, host virtual town halls and events, as well as to conduct video interviews as well. So really the need to adapt and be open to learning new platforms and tools, as well as comfortable with managing data. A lot of emphasis on data-driven decision making.
That's right.
When it comes to maybe a HR business partner role, when you're advising the business units on what are the learning solutions the team should take up to address their performance gaps. That's where you need to really show the data. Has this training solution been effective from previous teams? What is the impact in terms of usefulness, in terms of learning transfer? So data really comes into every aspect of HR and beyond HR as well.
That's right. That's right. From the moment you hire people, they are already data, to the person on board, and later on when the person starts performing at the job. And then a lot of organizations also do employees engagement study, so how well the person feel engaged at work, and also the person's career aspirations, and eventually maybe some promotion and retirements and all that. All these require data to help the organization to have an informed decision about people, right? So that you won't get surprised, right? Then suddenly you find yourself like, for example, 1/3 of your workforce are due to retire in 3 years' time. Then you are caught off guard or not prepared. Right? So I think what I'm trying to say is that HR profession increasingly must be comfortable with data and use data. And then the fact that nowadays there are a lot more tools available out there, right? That allows you to actually use data effectively. But of course, there is also one very critical issue, is that how do you also ensure data being used ethically, right? So that it's not being misused or even abused, right? By whoever is holding the information. So I think these are important areas that the HR profession increasingly has to learn to do and be aware. Now, I think I earlier on shared about the HR organization within the company. But HR career option-wise is beyond just internal HR role, right? There are also another set of industry, what we call HR consulting industry, right? So for those of you who are interested in future that you don't feel yourself satisfied working in a HR department for an organization, you want to give yourself greater exposure, want to learn different industry, how they actually practice HR, then perhaps you can consider going to what we call a HR consulting role. Now, when I talk about HR consulting role, there are different types of HR consulting company, right, that specialize in different areas as well, right? From for example, recruitment, that there are companies that do search, or what we typically call headhunting for organization, to also organization that provide what we call the outsourcing. That means organization, they may not want to have too many internal headcount to handle a lot of HR operation processing work. They may then want to outsource those work to external organization to handle those things, like keeping employees' records, or even payroll, processing the payment, monthly salary, and so on, right? So there are companies that do that. There's also HR consulting firms that specialize in training, learning and development, right? That provide a lot of wide-ranging of programs, so that you don't actually have to develop those programs in-house or yourself, but you're leveraging on those companies that specialize in those topics, right? And there's also consulting firms that specialize in, for example, talent development, talent management. That means they actually help you to assess your high potential in the organization, and then advise your organization who are the better fit to take on more senior role in the future. All right. So there are really, I mean, these are just some examples. There are many others as well, but in the interest of time, I'm just giving you an understanding and an idea that the training that you receive in this HR specialization program opens up the world of career opportunity, not just within organization doing HR role, but also in consulting industry. There's also another angle to HR is that HR is one of those functions that is actually portable. Portable in the sense that it is not confined to a particular industry, right? On the other hand, actually, any industry, for that matter, perhaps any organization, as long as you have people that you need to manage, you probably need a HR department or function to support the organization. So in other words, you can find HR from public service organization to private organization, or what we typically sometimes you call SME, small medium enterprise company, to large local enterprise, multinational organization, even including non-profit organizations such as NGOs and so on. They too also need a HR department to manage or to help support the people requirements, right? So that's kind of giving you an overview of HR. Now, we actually also have time now for some question and answer. So perhaps we can go to the Slido slides and to see whether there's any questions that you may want to pose for Val and I to take those questions. Yeah. Now, okay, there is also perhaps one common question we hear is that you know, because nowadays people talk about continuing education, right? Is that all that Nanyang Business School offer, right, to train us in all these foundational modules or knowledge in HR function? Well, the answer is no. The fact that you know, as a IHL organization, we continue to provide continuing education. So for the graduates of HRC program, they are certainly welcome to come back to Nanyang Business School. We also offer programs such as the Flexi Masters. It is actually for graduate people with working experience to come back to learn more about HR topics. But in this case, we anchor a bit differently, right? We actually work with IHRP, as I said earlier on, this the professional body in Singapore, to develop a Flexi Master for HR profession. But they are not coming back to learn about HR topic. Rather, they are here to learn about non-HR topic, such as strategic management, digital marketing, and business analytics, and so on, so that they are much better equipped to become a senior HR director or CHRO. Because at the senior level, it's no longer enough for you to be familiar in HR related issue, but also be familiar with non-HR functional knowledge, right? So those are the things that we offer to learners. Okay, so let's see whether we have any questions. Yeah. Okay, while waiting for any questions to come in, perhaps Val, you can share about maybe internship, okay, right? Because I'm sure many of you out there, you know, when you come to a university, one of the key things you look forward to is internship, right? So perhaps share about your experience in what were some of the internships you have taken in the past. Yeah.
Sure. So my first internship, the one I actually took for professional attachment, was with Crown Plaza, Changi Airport. It's the airport hotel. So the role was more of a generalist role, supporting on employee engagement. I was basically tasked to organize and facilitate a week-long week-long event called Celebrate Service Week. So full of employee engagement activities, designing amazing ways, was a lot of fun, as well as supporting on other matters such as more of employee administration, recruitment coordination. So that was about a 10-week internship, and I think I got to cover quite a wide spectrum of HR generalist matters in that internship. Then for my second internship that I took on before my final year, it was with Nestle Singapore. So it's more of compensation and benefits, supporting them to organize the annual employee health screening, as well as looking into more of their benefits administration, the policies, getting quotes from vendors to do some benchmarking. So that was also give me an insight into compensation and benefits more in terms of the working experience. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So how this internship experience prepare you or equip you in your current career?
Okay, so actually the roles are quite different from the current roles I did. I think my roles in Shopee campus recruitment as well as L&D vary quite a bit. But with that said, I think for the first internship, it really showed me in smaller organizations how, with lean HR teams, how they really do a bit of everything. The generalist role is really end-to-end. You need to really be able to adapt to basically serving employee needs and supporting employees on a wide spectrum of activities from engagement to recruitment to even conducting exit interviews for those who are leaving. Yeah, so that was for the first one. The second one was more of really understanding more about the benefits administration, policies. So areas in HR I feel that are very interesting and may come naturally to some. But I think for me, it was something that I found maybe my interest lies in another area of HR.
I see.
So I feel like no matter what, your internship is still going to be a learning opportunity.
Yes,
it's going to teach you more about what you like, what you're good at, or conversely, what you may not really like or what you could improve on. So no matter what, I would just advise to, really embrace any opportunity with an open mind. It's there for you to learn, for you to develop personally. I think no matter what, I did learn something from both internships, and it helped me to pivot to something that is more in line with my strengths and what I like.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, don't rule out too quickly. Keep your option open. And when the internship opportunity comes, just try it out because you do not know, right? You are still in a very early stage of your career. So try out different internship so that you can better inform of what is your real interest in the future, right? So I can see that there's a question around, there's a second major in entrepreneurship. How does that pair with HR specialization? Now, we are not saying that for HR specialized program students, you have to, take on the entrepreneurs program. But increasingly, the university are encouraging students to take up a broad spectrum of programs. So entrepreneurship is actually one of those specialized programs. Unless you really decided that I want to be an entrepreneur, yes, then you really want to pursue a major in entrepreneurship. But let's say you just really want to know, like, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Many of those modules you can also select as your elective, right? You don't have to say that I need to do a major in order to practice this. So I'm not sure whether that kind of answer your question directly, but certainly if you really want to, for example, in future, you want to start a HR consulting firm yourself, right? You want to maybe have some very good idea to develop apps in offering HR solution, right? Then perhaps you want to do a few modules on entrepreneurship. Okay. I didn't do well for OB module. Does that mean that HRC is not for me? Then I would say that because OB is requirements for you to get into HR specialization, you need to get at least a B grade, right? And why so? Because a lot of the HR models, theories, or even people engagement processes and skills comes from the practice of OB, right? So if your OB you really struggle, then you probably have to think twice about, is this something that is my interest, right? Because sometimes if the grade is not that high, it may also imply that about your interest. But you have really strong interest, then naturally, you probably can do quite well in that particular module. But there are also other modules for you to choose in Nanyang Business School, right? You have marketing, you have banking and finance, and so on, right? So yeah, so I think that will be my response to your questions. Okay, so do we have time? Okay, right. So I think we come to the end of today's sharing sessions. So I hope what we shared today is of benefits to you, gives you a much better understanding of the program and also what it takes in future, right? If you do step into the career in HR. So Val, any last word for our audience out there?
I think for those who are considering HR, it's really a good place to be in. Not necessarily you have to be a people person. I've seen people who are very introverted, and they love dealing with data, and they're doing very well in maybe more of a HR analytics kind of role or compensation and benefits. So there's really different opportunities and different possibilities within the HR space. And just keep your options open, keep your mind open, yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Val.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody for listening to our presentation and sharing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Choose NBS because it empowers you to be your best. Because it helps to discover a better you for the future that you dream of.
Basically, to find ourselves and to learn how you can make an impact in this world.
Come to NBS to experience a different you. See you at NBS.
See you at NBS.
See you at NBS. See you at NBS.
I look forward to seeing you at NBS.